Oh, hey there, guys. Sorry about that intro video. Little technical difficulties today. As promised, we're trying to go live on Facebook every day that we would have normal shop hours, but because of the COVID thing, we're doing appointment only hours. So trying to keep everybody involved. Today's live is going to be all about the Megalodon Ledge and kind of give you a little brief overview of how everything works. I finally got my Wacom tablet working, so I should be able to draw a diagram for you like I promised yesterday. The Megalodon Ledge, it's one of our most popular charters. We run 2 weekends a month, May through just about October every year, where we send groups of 6 down to North Carolina. It's out of Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, and on board the boat called the Ledge Tender, which is the charter operator that we use. He's not tied to any individual dive shop, so he's just a charter operator. But awesome crew, really great guys. They take us out, they put us on the teeth every single time, and everybody's going to get teeth when you go down. So you might not be getting buckets full like I do. I've been doing it for a long time, but you'll definitely get some teeth. We've had rookies come back with 6-inch teeth. So just a really, really good time. The diving's awesome. It's usually blue, warm water, so most of the time a 3 mil is more than enough. Early in the spring, you might need something a little bit thicker just because of the water temp, but usually it's pretty warm. It's 40 miles offshore, and so the water is in the Gulf Stream. And you end up having a lot of pelagic life. It's blue water, all kinds of cool stuff. So I'll show you some of that here in a minute with some videos, but what I wanted to show you first is how the boat works as far as getting out onto the ledge. And so what we have here is just a blank canvas, and I'm going to see if I can get this to work without messing it up too much. I'm not really that great on this tablet yet, but let's see here. All right, so what I'm going to draw first is just the water line. Let's see. So if you think about that as being the water, the ocean, and then down here I'm going to draw the bottom. So that would be the sand. Ooh, I'm not really good at this. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm not good at that. I'm not going to type that out. But anyway, we'll draw a tooth. So that's a shark's tooth, if you can believe it or not. And then I'm going to draw the boat up here. I'm really bad at this tablet. So that's the boat. This would be the front of the boat, and then this would be the back of the boat. We're going to draw a little ladder here. So you can tell I'm not good at art. So anyway, that's the boat on top of the water, and then what we're going to do is explain how the line system works and what you're going to do once you get down to the bottom. So the line that's attached to the boat goes down to the bottom here, and is usually either an anchor or it's tied into something on the bottom so that the boat can't go away. And then from that point, there's a line that comes down from the front of the boat down to below here, and a line that runs over here, and another line that runs up to here. Usually some anchors right here, some weight to keep this line. And so this line, it's usually a rope, is at the 15-foot mark for your safety stop on the way back up. And then there's what we call a tag line that goes over to here from here. And so what you can see is once you get into the water, this would be the back of the boat over here. Once you get into the water, you're going to pull yourself down this line here, come across here, all the way to the front, and then you're going to go down the anchor line. Now at the bottom, it's 100 feet. And at the bottom is where we're going to be looking for the teeth. So, hold on one second. Let me turn my notifications off here because it's going to be making noises. All right. So you get in the water up here, follow the line system down to the bottom. Once you get down to the bottom, there's usually a pretty good length down around here of chain, and it might even come up to this way a little bit. and you tie your reel in on the chain, and then you're going to run your reel out into the sand. You don't have to run very far normally, and there's going to be somebody that's going to tell you what direction to head in to run your reel. And then as you're on the bottom, swimming along the bottom, you're going to look for pieces of fossil. So a lot of times we'll see whale bones, whale rib bones, pieces of rib bones. Sometimes you'll even find teeth on the very top of the sand on your way out. A lot of people have found some really good teeth there. But you're going to find a spot where it looks like there's already some fossils laying out, and that's where you want to start digging. Now, if they put us on a spot that has already been worked a little bit, you'll see along the way, you'll see some pits where people have already been digging for teeth. If the pit is fairly deep, that's probably not a bad place to start looking, because that means somebody was finding teeth. If it's very shallow, there's a chance that they weren't finding anything, they moved on to another pit. But that's a good spot to go ahead and start working. And again, you don't have to run your reel out very far. You got to remember that you're at 100 feet, and so for every minute you're down there, you're very limited with your time at 100 feet. Even with nitrox, you're still very limited with your time at 100 feet as far as your no decompression limit goes, plus your gas usage is higher that deep. So what you want to do is make sure that you aren't running any further than you absolutely need to. You also have to keep in mind that that reel is going to have to be ran back in at some point. So if you see a spot, just go ahead and start digging there first. Also keep in mind that if you find a good spot on that first dive, second dive, just set your reel down in that spot, follow your line back, and then on the next dive you just come down and run your reel, or follow your reel back out to the spot you were digging at and continue finding teeth. So get out here and you set your reel down and then start digging. And I'm going to show you, when I say digging, it's not really physically digging. Let me switch the scene over here and we'll actually be able to show you what I'm talking about. So this is some video I took in 2011 on the Meg Ledge, and it shows you exactly what it looks like on the bottom. So it's 100 feet to the sand, and then once you get down, you kind of just start brushing the sand away, just like I'm doing right here. There are other methods of doing this, and I'll show you that, another one of those in a second. Kind of getting the camera situated here on the ledge. See all those pretty fish? I mean, it's blue water, it's beautiful down there. It's really good diving. Take the teeth away from it, it's still really good diving. And you can see I'm using my hand just kind of to brushing the sand away. So what happens is the teeth will get moved around. Sometimes they'll sit underneath the sand. Sometimes they'll sit right on top. If there's been some surge or something recently, you can find the teeth right on the top. But these little teeth you'll see all over the place, and they're, when we say little, if you think about teeth that you find around here, they're actually rather large. People will say, wow, that's a big tooth. Well, for what we're finding on the Meg Ledge, they're actually kind of little. So you'll find a ton of those. A lot of people like to gather those. I have a whole bunch of those at home. And then see how I'm kind of getting down in the sand a little bit? As you keep working down in the sand, you'll get to what we call the marl. And marl is basically the bottom of the ocean. It's almost like a clay-like substance. It looks like the surface of the moon, kind of, when you get down to it. There's a bigger tooth I found right there. Once you get down to the marl, that's a good place to start looking for those bigger teeth like that, because the bigger ones, the heavier ones, they kind of shift their way down through the sand over time with the surge and everything, and then they make their way down to the bottom. There's another nice sized tooth. And so once you get down to the marl in that hole, go ahead and just start working the edges of that hole out. So you want to stay on the marl if you can and just work your way out. So you can see I'm working that hole there. Those extra tanks I have there, and you don't have to take them. A lot of people should and do take a pony bottle with them, but I'm actually doing a light decompression dive on that dive, so I have some decompression gases with me, but that's not what you have to do for this dive. If you're sticking to your no deco limits, you can just take a pony bottle down. The reason we suggest, hold on, let me pause this real quick. The reason we suggest a pony bottle is because you'll get, a lot of people get narrowed in on looking for those teeth, and once you start digging, it's kind of more or less solo diving, because you can see the visibility kind of got a little bit less there as I started digging. It doesn't ever get horrible, but you could lose sight of your buddy. And if you're right on top of your buddy, your lines are going to get tangled up, and you'll be causing each other some visibility issues. So let me show you this other video here real quick. So this is a little bit better. This one was done in 2015, so the camera technology is a little bit better. In this video, I'm going to show what it looks like to use a scooter, which is the way that I dive now. I have a scooter that I take along, and I flip it around so that the thrust is actually in front of me and forcing down, and it moves the sand a lot more efficiently that way. So you move a lot more sand, cover a lot more ground. The only caveat to this is it's awesome. It makes it easy. But a lot of times I'll miss teeth too because it's moving so much so fast. If your eyes aren't tracking really, really quick, you'll actually blow the teeth right out in front of you. It's very common for me to go back and follow a line that I've dug with a scooter and find teeth that I completely missed sitting right there on the top. But here's what this looks like. As you can see, it's blue water. You can see for a good little distance there. See how I'm moving a ton of the sand with that scooter like that. The fish will swarm like that because as you move the ground with the scooter, little worms will come up and stuff, and they like to feed on everything that pops up out of the sand. That's why those fish come up. Obviously, I'm on a rebreather for this, but it's not, rebreather or tech diving is not required for these dives. You can do it on just regular scuba, and people are very successful with that. The rebreather does give me the advantage of staying down longer. Normally on my tech dives on the rebreather, I'll do 2.5 hours of bottom time searching for teeth, and then about 1.5 hours spinning coming back up. So there's a tooth I just found. And like I mentioned, when you're doing that, the scooter, you have to have your eyes have to be tracking fairly quickly to be able to catch the teeth and not just blow them out of your way. Here's what it looks coming back up on the boat. So you just follow the line up. It's very similar to wreck diving where they tie into the wreck. You can see in the background, right, oh, just missed it, the anchor hanging there. There's people on their safety stops coming up. And we carry a mesh bag along. There's a pony bottle set up, like I mentioned. And there's this boat actually had a hang bar on it, but most of them are hang lines. There's the ladder up there. And so back to this real quick. If you are starting to dig a hole and you get to, why is that not doing it? There we go. Let's consider this the bottom of the ocean, the marl. So you start digging through all of this sand here and you get down to this marl. It's going to look like the surface of the moon. It's got pits in it, gray in color, and it's like Swiss cheese almost. It's kind of interesting looking. The pits are much bigger than Swiss cheese, obviously, but you get down to that part and you start finding the bigger teeth on the bottom here in that marl. What you want to do is keep on digging that hole out from where you are, and that's going to let you stay down on the marl and work this area, which is where you usually find the bigger teeth. And then after you're done, if you found a good hole, go ahead and just leave your reel sitting right there in the hole. A lot of people will mark their reel at this end here with like a colored marble or something to be able to keep track of which one's theirs, because if we have 6 reels out, it's not always going to be the same. You don't want everybody to have the same color because you might end up picking the wrong reel when you come back up. Let me change the color here real quick and see if I can't do this. There we go. So you might have, your reel might have like a red ball on it or something. So when you come back down for the second or third dive, you can just go right to your red ball, follow your line out to where you were digging before and start digging back in that hole again. Keep in mind that third dive is going to be short. So we do 3 dives on the Meg Ledge. The first dive is the longest one of the day, obviously. We have about an hour and 10 surface interval in between, second dive, and then the third dive. On that third dive, you got to watch your no decompression limits because you want to make sure you have enough time to get everything stirred up and run that reel back so you're not leaving your reel hanging down there. And we're not going to be pushing it into any decompression on that unless you're trained for it. So digging for the teeth, you want to make sure you have all that NDL. Pay attention to your computer. Your NDL is going to go real quick. It's 100 feet, And unlike most dives that you might hit 100 feet at some point in the dive, this dive you're at 100 feet for the entire dive. So it's a very much a square profile. Versus that's a square profile, so you're down to 100 feet, at 100 feet the whole time, and then back up. Versus a wreck dive where you might go down, see the propeller at 100 feet, come back up on the wreck, on the deck, swim around there for a little bit up to the conning tower, back down around, and then you go up. Only a small portion of that dive was spent at the 100 feet, so your no decompression limit is going to be less once you get up there. I'm sorry, longer once you get up to here. Whereas the Mega Ledge dives or square profiles, you're at 100 feet the entire time, so your time goes really quick. Even with nitrox, you're still at about 22, 23 minutes on the first dive, and then shorter for each subsequent dive. I've been doing this for many years. It's a lot of fun. It would warn most people that you will get addicted to it really quick. It's a blast, not just because you're bringing something back. It's just the diving is really good. Finding something underwater is really neat. It's a lot of fun, and a lot of people, we have a lot of repeats every year. So it's an expensive charter, but it's one of the most fun types of diving outside of cave diving for me. I really enjoy this type of diving, and you get to bring back those big old fossil shark's teeth. So this is actually a smaller one. I literally have buckets of these things out in my garage. Some of them I have to still clean, but we'll talk about meg teeth real quick. So when you find them on the bottom, and I don't have any right here that aren't cleaned, when you find them on the bottom, they're going to have growth on them, and it's just a normal growth. So it might be just biological life, all kinds of stuff. So it's sometimes they blend into the sand, and you're not necessarily looking for the contrast of this dark color of the tooth to the sand, which is lighter color. What you're looking for is the shape more than anything. Sometimes it'll be just that sticking out. Sometimes it'll be just that sticking out. So as you get more experience doing this type of diving, you're going to be able to kind of pinpoint those little shapes out, and then go grab the tooth, and then stick it in your bag. The growth will come off if you find a really, really nice tooth. And when we talk about the condition of the tooth, some of the things we look at is the enamel, how much of the enamel is on it. So as you can see, some of the enamel has come off from up here. If it's a perfect tooth and the enamel's up and it's a nice V here on enamel on both sides, good symmetric shape, in a larger tooth, I always tell people go ahead and take the time to manually clean that tooth with a pick versus using any kind of chemicals or anything like that. For me, and this is just a personal preference thing, there's going to be a lot of different people going to tell you a lot of different things about cleaning the teeth. I use red wine vinegar, and so that's not apple cider and that's not white vinegar. It's red wine vinegar. It's used for cooking. Hard to find in mass quantities, like gallon sizes, but you can find it. It's not expensive, but it's just not carried as frequently as the apple cider and white vinegar. So I use a 50-50 red wine vinegar and water solution. So I'll pour a gallon of the red wine vinegar and then a gallon of water into a bucket, and then I'll set the teeth in there. It's still acidic, and so what happens is the chemicals will start to eat away at the biological life and help get it off of there a little bit quicker. You don't want to leave it in there too long because it can actually start to eat away at the enamel. So you can see the enamel on this is slightly polished, got a little bit of a sheen to it. Just like our teeth have an enamel on it, you don't want to wear away at that shine on the enamel. So you don't want to leave it in there too long. A couple hours is generally as much as I'm going to leave it, and that's going to get the bulk of that biological life off of the tooth. And then after that, just use a stiff brush, like a stiff brush with nylon scrubbing on it. I wouldn't use brass or anything like that you'd scratch the enamel with, just to get the rest of it off. After you leave the teeth in the red wine vinegar for any amount of time, you want to make sure you let it sit in some fresh water to stop that reaction, because that acid's worked its way down into the little cracks and crevices, and you want some good fresh water rinse and soak. Usually, if I have a good batch, I will pull them from the red wine, do an initial rinse, with fresh water, and then stick them in a bucket with fresh water for a couple hours, and then flush it again with fresh water, and I let it sit overnight, and that generally will get most of that red wine vinegar out, and then you can clean it. If you find a nice tooth and the enamel is not as shiny as you want it, a unscented beeswax, all natural unscented beeswax you can get on Amazon, it's real cheap, will give it a nice little shine, and it doesn't hurt the tooth any because it's completely natural. So that's a good little way to do that. So things to note for the Meg Ledge dive if you're diving for teeth with us, some things you'll need. First of all, it's an advanced dive because it's 100 feet deep, so you have to have your advanced open water diver. You are absolutely going to want to use nitrox on these because your air no decompression limit at 100 feet is going to be very short. They're expensive dives to go out on, and you want as much time as you can down at the bottom searching for the teeth. So keep that in mind when you're doing that. And then something else that you're going to want to keep in mind is, let me see if I can get this adjusted here real quick. You need a bag to put all your teeth in. So we have the mesh bags in the shop that we use, and that's perfect. A little clip to clip it off on your BCD. You need a reel because you do not want to go out in the open ocean without some sort of line access back to the boat, like we mentioned on here. If you came down here, if you came down the line and then just went out into the open here without any kind of reference back, it doesn't take much to get yourself turned around. Even though the visibility is generally good and you might be able to see that line, you don't want to take that chance because doing a free ascent 40 miles offshore in the middle of the ocean is not any fun for anybody. Plus then we have to track you down. So you want to run a reel out here so you have that reference line. 100-foot reel is probably more than enough for most people. You don't really want to run it out. Yeah, I'd say 200 foot would give you a lot of leeway. So a 200-foot reel, you don't really want to run it out much more than 100 feet. That's a little bit of a distance, and you're going to have to reel it back. So surface marker buoy, you have to have a surface marker buoy for these dives, because if for some reason your line got tangled or you lost your line for whatever reason, you came up away from the boat, we need a surface marker buoy up so that the dive boat can see you and keep track of you. There is often a current. A lot of times it's not very strong, but it can be a strong current, and if you come up away from the boat and you don't have a surface marker buoy, it's hard to track you. You could be a mile away from the boat before you come up from your safety stop, and you want to make sure that you're not getting lost out there. 40 miles is a long way to is a large search area for Coast Guard. So I want to make sure that we can see you when you come up. The pony bottle is suggested, as I mentioned, because if you're searching and you run out of air, have a gear issue, it's more or less solo diving. You're not going to your buddy to grab their air source and get on their air. So pony bottle is like a built-in buddy for you. We always say to be very cognizant of your SPG and your pressure, your tank pressure throughout these dives, because you are at 100 feet. You're using quite a bit more gas than a normal. So every breath is 3 times the amount of breath on the surface. We also suggest the high volume tanks for these, so it's not an aluminum 80 you're going to be taking on these. If you want to match up your extended no decompression limit with the available gas to stay down for that actual extended no decompression limit because of the nitrox, you want to have more volume. So you're kind of balancing those two things out and then getting the best bang for your buck for your bottom time, matching up your gas and your no decompression limit. What else? So yeah, that's it. You want to bring a small bucket along with you, like a 5-gallon bucket would work, but for saving of space, a 2.5 gallon bucket, like a painter's bucket, that's what you want to put your teeth in between the dives. And the reason that I say that's important is because I've actually lost a bag full of teeth on the 3rd dive coming up. And what I did initially was I just kept the teeth in the bag and went back down, put my new teeth in it. And on the 3rd dive, I had half a bag full of teeth coming back up, and the clip broke and I couldn't get it. And so what you want to do is you want to dump your teeth out into that bucket that's on the boat in between dives. It also saves you from having to haul all the teeth back up and down. And then once you get back to the shore, it's important to cover the teeth in that bucket with just a layer of water. So you want to run the water in there till it's just above the teeth in the bucket, and that will keep them from stinking real bad, because that biological life, once it gets into the air, it starts to die off, and it'll smell real bad. Your ride home could be really smelly in your truck if you don't have some sort of water over top of it, or at the very least a lid on the bucket. Yeah, so let's see. Open for questions on here. I'm watching for questions. For scuba divers, how long do you typically soak them in the red wine vinegar? Mentioned it earlier, but I'll say it again. No more than a couple hours generally. Now, what we do find a lot of times is other fossils. So you'll find whale rib bones, vertebrae, half or partial pieces of teeth. And in those cases, when I'm not really too terribly worried about the enamel staying shiny, I can let them soak for a little bit longer, and that takes some of the work off of taking the biological life off by hand. But if it's a nice batch of teeth, of whole teeth, normally what I'll do is I'll separate my batches. So I'll separate all my whole teeth that are nice into one bucket, and then I'll separate the partials into another, and then any other fossils usually go in with the partials. So I'll have two different buckets. One will soak a little bit longer than red wine vinegar because I'm not too terribly worried about the enamel on it, and then the ones that have the enamel, the good teeth that are going to be the prettiest, I usually don't do any more than a couple hours on that, and that's usually enough to get a majority of it off of there without having to do too much manual labor after you rinse them. So let's see here. I wanted to show you guys. Let me put the scene over here. So this is our website if you're looking to find dates real soon. So these book out super early. I think there's only like 1 or 2 trips that have spots open. But for next year, this was where you would look. So this is our homepage on our website. And if you go up here to trips, and we consider it a local dive trip because it's still in the country, click on that, and that's not supposed to do that. There we go. We have Megalodon Teeth, the 1105 Lake Erie. And you would just click on the Megalodon tooth, and it'll take you right to that. So this is actually a picture of teeth collected without any biological life, which is not too common. So teeth found like that are not that common. That is back at the dock, I believe. There's a little bit of growth on that one right there. That's the kind of growth you'll see. A lot of times it'll cover a lot of the tooth. Especially the teeth that are really nice, have good serrations on it, and the enamel's really good. Normally they're coated pretty good in biological life. That's a nice tooth right there. Got to see how the enamel here comes down and V's out. It's lost a little bit here. I'm trying to find one that has really nice enamel. I don't see any in that picture that has some really nice. Something else to mention is that you see how there's different colors of teeth here. So the colors are basically determined by what the tooth settles on, what kind of sediment it settles on before it fossilized. So some of them will have this nice orangish color. Here's a nice orange one right here. That's pretty cool. So they're very individual. They can be what was the word I'm looking for? They can look quite different in between the different types of teeth, and they're still all Megalodon teeth, but the color of the sediment that they settled in is what determines that. So they can all look a little bit different, which is really neat. So they're very individual. Anyway, so I meant to show you here. You go onto our website, pull down the website here. The cost currently is $600 for the weekend. We don't split days. Because I have a hard time finding people that want to drive all the way down to North Carolina just for one day of diving. Almost everybody wants to do both days. And so if I split the days, I very rarely fill that second day. And it's not cool to pay for a spot that's not going to be taken. That's 3 dives each day, so 3 tanks. And so 6 dives over Saturday and Sunday. You leave the dock in the morning about 7, and you'll be back by 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It is a long day. It's about an hour and a half, almost 2-hour boat ride out to the site, and then you're going to spend, 2 hours diving and 3 hours surface interval, and then another hour and a half, 2 hours coming back, depending on the weather. Here's our dates if you look over here. So if you're looking for dates, those are the dates. I need to update it because I think we only have a couple spots left on this one, and then a couple spots on there. The rebreather only trips, if you happen to be a rebreather diver, we do those for rebreather divers, and basically it's a single dive, and you're spending, you know, up to 4 hours of time. For me, like I mentioned earlier, I usually do 2.5 hours down looking, and then about an hour and a half coming back up to the boat on decompression stops. And it makes it nice because it's only on and off the boat once, and you get a little bit more time on the bottom searching for the teeth. So the cost of the charter only gets you on the boat, which means that you're responsible for everything, including tanks and weights. All of the gear is your responsibility, so that is literally just for the boat ride. We can get tanks delivered to the dock for you, steel 120s, for the weekend, so that's an additional $120 to have that taken care of for you. So basically the tanks will be there waiting for you on the boat each day, filled with nitrox. You can rent the tanks from us and then haul them down. That's an option as well, a little bit cheaper, but you just got to haul them yourself. And or you can bring your own tanks if you have your own tanks. So weights, that's all on you. They might have a couple extra weights on the boat just in case somebody messed up their weighting, but it's not, they're not providing the weights for these dives. So is there, let me see here, Jim had a question. Let me see what we got here. Jim said steel 120s with 30, what are the normal times for 3 dives? Jim, it's 32%. The MOD for 32% is 111, and none of the ledge is going to get below 111. So 32%, actually 34 is probably the best mix, but 32 is the common one that they fill it with. Normal times on those dives for most people, 23 to 25 minutes for the first dive, 19, 20 minutes for the second dive, and then a little bit shorter on the third. It really just depends on how long you're taking to get to the bottom. And then, you know, the times are the times, and we know the depth, so you can really nail it down. But what we can't do is nail down how long it's going to take you to pull yourself down the line to the bottom. For me, when I was still doing open circuit, I would haul butt all the way down to the bottom as quick as I could, because your time starts as soon as you descend. So as soon as you go under the water, that's when your no decompression time starts calculating. And so for me, I would hand over hand down the line, just all the way down to the bottom as fast as I could equalize my ears, get to the bottom, so I could start searching for teeth. With the rebreather, I don't really have to rush too much because I have 2.5 hours to do that. A lot of times I'll end up getting bored and going and looking for sharks, looking for lobster or lionfish or something else. Sometimes I go around to that's where I take video and everything. That's when I have the time to do all that. We'll play that again real quick. So that's what it looks like for me down there. I have that scooter that helps me blow the sand away. And that's a little bit of a workout too. You think moving it with your hand is more work, but when you have the scooter turned around like that, it's pushing up against you. So you have to, usually my right arm you see is holding the scooter there. My right arm will get pretty sore by the end of a day of diving, just from holding it like that. And then I'll stop every once in a while and kind of sift through what I just blew out with the scooter and look for teeth. And you'll end up picking one up and throwing it in the bag real quick. Trying to see, I have a video, if you guys will hold off, I just didn't think about this. Give me 1 second here. I have a video where I did, let's see here. There's a ton of videos online if you guys want to go and look and see what it looks like down there. Rebreather, Meg Ledge rebreather. Oh, come on. Nope, that is not what I wanted. Alright, I don't want to bore you guys on here, but give me 1 second, I can find it. I have a really good video that shows what it's like when I go down on the rebreather. And then there's something else I wanted to show you on that too, is how I set up my bag, my mesh bag with my reel. And I apologize for not having this pulled up beforehand, but I did not think about it. So when I go down and use my reel go run out, one of the things you want to do, especially when you're on open circuit, is try to maximize every second that you're down there finding teeth. And one of the things, there we go, one of the things that can make it a little bit more efficient when you do these dives is to clip your bag open with a double ender clip. And let me see if I can get to that point where so this is what it looks like. This will actually be a good example. So I grabbed my scooter, I'm headed down. Once you get down to the bottom, at this point, in this point of the video, I had a pole spear with me because I was looking for lionfish as well on that dive. But what I want to show you on this is how you hook into the chain. So that chain is actually wrapped around that clump of coral right there. It's really just a big rock. There's some growth on it, but it's not all coral, because that would be environmentally unresponsible. See how I'm going to tie there's my reel. I'm going to loop it around, loop it through, and then I'm just going to run the reel out into the sand. You can see a couple lines right there that are already ran out. In this case, I'm using the scooter instead of swimming. It makes it a little bit easier, although you could swim just as easy. Now, if you look here, once I get out to where I want to go, I'm going to pull my bag out, and then I'm going to, hopefully, I wish it would, there we go, pull it out so that it's sitting. See how, no, let me pause it real quick. See how there was, I'm going to stop it right where I can see it. See how this double ender right here is in between the handles of the bag? That's keeping the bag open so that when you find a tooth, you can just shove the tooth in the bag and keep on going. What I see a lot of people do, a lot of newbies, is they'll clip the bag off and then unclip the handle, put a tooth in, clip it back together, clip it back on their BCD every single time. You're wasting a lot of time doing that. So what I like to do is I use this double ender here to actually keep the bag from closing. And then as you watch, I'll show you how I lay it down. I'll lay it down in front of me. I lock the reel, use the double ender on the reel, clip it on the bag. Everything's right there in front of me. Nothing's getting away from me. And then as I find the teeth, I'll slide them right into the opening on the bag, right over here. And then every once in a while, all you have to do is lift the bag up to slide the teeth down to the bottom of the bag. And then when you're done, you just unclip that double ender, close it up, and there you go. There's a nice tooth. This is actually a really cool video to watch. There's no point in me watching the whole thing with you guys sitting here. We can pull it up. I can put the YouTube link in the video description for the Facebook Live. But this is a really cool video to show you what it looks like down there as well, because I had it going for a good little distance. Now you don't see my bag on this one because my little story on this. My bag was so full of teeth, I had already taken it back to the chain and clipped it off on the chain. I just couldn't haul it anymore. It was so heavy. And then I went back out and ended up finding another good spot. So the teeth that I found out here, I didn't even have a bag to put in. I ended up putting them in the pockets on my wetsuit. I ended up shoving a couple of them in the wrists of the wetsuit. So you can really tear up the teeth out here. It makes it just a ton of fun. But yeah, so if you use the double ender clip on that bag to keep it open and then clip off the reel, that'll make it nice and easy. The other nice thing about doing it that way is by clipping let me get to the point where it is here. When you clip the reel off onto the bag, if for some reason somebody got tangled in your line or the boat for some reason cut free and started dragging that chain, instead of just seeing a small reel drag across the bottom, you're going to see your entire bag dragging across the bottom, so you would know that something was up and you needed to head back. It's a larger item to see dragging across the bottom versus just the reel. So any other questions? Jim, does that answer your question? I think I answered your question. about the bottom time. Yeah, I would definitely suggest 32. If you're bringing your own tanks, see if they can get you 34. I think the MOD for 34 is like 102, 103. So you'd be maximizing your bottom time with if you get the perfect mix. And since there's really no chance of going any deeper on these dives because you're on the bottom, you can get your mix as perfect as you can for that 100 feet mark and not have to worry about exceeding an MOD with it. So anybody else? Barb, I see you're watching, and I miss Tom diving with us. Tell him I said that. Any other questions? Comments, concerns? Here to talk all about Megalodon teeth. This is a great time to ask any of those questions you might have on it. The best thing about Megalodon teeth is you're not catching corona under the water. It's maybe too soon. I don't know. Recommendations on places to stay, Jim. There are a ton of places. If you find anywhere in Wrightsville Beach, there is. You would ask me that. There's a. Let me see here. I already have my reservations for this year made. There is a. Is it Comfort Inn and Suites? No. Comfort Inn stays here. Oh, come on. Hampton Inn and Suites in Wilmington, Wrightsville Beach is the one that I stay at. A little bit pricey, but it is literally 3 minutes from the dock, and there's a ton of food options around there. These days are going to wear you out. They are very long days. You're going to be worn out, so, you know, other than going out for dinner, it's not like you're going to go out and party each night, although I'm old, so maybe younger folk can handle that better, but not me. I go back and I crash usually. So Hampton Inn and Suites in Wrightsville Beach, but there's a ton of stuff there. It's a beach town just like Ocean City, lots of lodging options available. You probably find Airbnb fairly cheap. I've stayed at Airbnb down there before. Anybody wants that Airbnb information, I can get it for you. It was a pretty nice little place as well, cheaper than the Hampton Inn. But if there's no other questions, that's it for today. If I think of anything else, I'll post it in the comments of the Facebook live feed. I hope everybody got something out of this today, and again, apologize for my subpar drawing skills. It'd probably be better if I had a piece of paper, which is weird because this tablet is just the same as a piece of paper, but I just can't get it on the digital stuff. You guys are going to have a blast doing it. Keep in mind it is ocean diving, so you know there's always the chance of the weather causing some problems, but you know, I'd say probably 70% chance you get out, 30% if you go truly on all the numbers, all the days that we dive. It's just a lot of fun. You're going to really enjoy it and be ready to get addicted to it, because most people that have done it once, they end up coming back. That's why we ended up having to move to 2 weekends a month each year, because the 1 weekends was literally filling within the first couple weeks that I posted dates. So I don't want to get a lot of people out diving, but everybody's going to love it. And real quick before we leave, are there any suggestions for the next topic? I know I have a couple in queue for. This was one actually I think that Jim suggested yesterday, and it was one that I could do without too much prep here at the house. But I know Gary had mentioned balanced regs versus unbalanced regs. I'm going to have to get some stuff out of the shop to do that properly, but that is on the list. And let's see what else. There was a couple other ones. We already went over tables. Oh, tanks. The waiting for tanks. I could do that one here without having to do too much prep work. So maybe tomorrow, since we would have been wait a minute, what's today? Today's Saturday. So Monday we will do the tanks. So all about tanks, the differences between aluminum, steels, weighting concerns between aluminum and steels, how to weight yourself appropriately between the two, aluminum and steels, and even furthermore different size aluminums and steel tanks. And that'll be a good little presentation. I'll have all kinds of statistics and some charts for you to show the weights and everything. But hopefully everybody's staying socially distanced. It's just weird. I mean, we thought 9/11 was going to be the worst thing that ever happened in our generation, or the strangest kind of out there kind of thing that happened, but this is definitely on the list as well. And I really think that the next week or two is going to be telling on how it goes, but hopefully we'll be back in the water before you know it. So, all right, guys, if there's no more questions, one more chance. I don't see anything over here. Gonna call it a day. Been 45 minutes, and we will see you on Monday for All About Tanks. All right, guys, see you later.